And today is another special episode because we are joined by a guest today. It's not just me. And we're going to hear from someone in the real world who is willing to share their experience learning about the Enneagram, learning about their specific type, what they've learned about themselves, and their coworkers. So I'd like for you to welcome Susan LaPart, who is not far from me, I guess, fellow Midwest person out of the Columbus, Ohio area. She is the director of operations for a dental group who runs three dental, I want to say studios, but practices. There we go. That's probably the best word. So, Susan, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're willing to do this.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so let's well, before we jump in, I wanted to start with your type, but before we bust into that, I wanted to share how we met. So, you are part of the 3D dental group. You were at the summit in Nashville a couple of months ago. We connected. Would you share just a little bit about your specific dental practice and what your team was doing at the conference?
Sure. My dentist owner is part of the 3D mastermind. So we have had experience with 3D for some years, a year or so now. And so this was their summit. This was their kind of big celebration for the year. And my favorite part of it was your portion. Uh, I have always been fascinated by personalities and how they affect other, like just human relations. So it was fun to listen and see.
Well, I have told multiple people after, I think I even talked about it here on the show at some point, that you all had one of the most fun groups I've ever been a part of and such an awake group. I think my session was at 9 a.m. or something like that, and you all were ready to go.
After a night out, it was after a night out, mind
Yeah, after
you.
night out, there was champagne flowing and
Yeah,
clapping
yeah.
and photos of
Yeah.
interesting events from the night before. So I thought, man, it's a hard act to follow this morning opening session. Okay, well, let's get into it. So we went through the nine type overview. There was like a fun short quiz also that we did. And would you be willing to share where you landed after that
Sure.
experience?
I was a very strong type nine. I feel like I had some sprinkles of two,
Okay.
but nothing identified me like nine did.
Okay, and then so for our listeners, just as a reminder, the type 9 is the striving to feel at peace, and that means I want to feel peace in my outside environment, and I also want to feel peaceful inside as well. So, what are some of the specific qualities that we talked about, or that maybe you've learned about since that really made you feel like, okay, this is my type?
I'm the kind of person I've always been a manager for the last 20 years. I've been a manager of people. And so I don't know. I feel like in my early career, I probably identified more as a type four, but I've grown into maybe a type nine.
Okay.
It's I am a headline only kind of person. I am in it for the others. I don't necessarily, it is my mission to see our day home be as peaceful as possible, to not have the drama, to communicate effectively, um to just feel like literally feel at peace. I don't want chaos in a work life. It's not necessary,
Oh
in my
yeah,
opinion.
I think other nines are going to be nodding along with that. It's just not necessary. Yeah, I feel that. You mentioned that you were the type two was kind of close for you as well, and I wanted just to touch on that if you don't mind, because so often that is one of the biggest struggles that I will run into with people who are trying to narrow down their type. There's a lot of common ones, but I would say, am I a two or am I a nine? Probably in the top three or top five kind of type struggles. What about the two made you feel like, oh, I could see myself in here, or what overlap did you see for those two types for yourself?
I find myself being a coach and a cheerleader for the people in my life. And so that's how I kind of picked two into my life. What I don't identify as much with two are the over strengths. I feel like my over strengths really fit more the type nine.
Okay, and for those of you who have been through a workshop, you know what Susan's talking about. And if you haven't, how we position the different qualities and characteristics or common behaviors of each type is that each type has several common strengths. Now, that doesn't mean if you identify with this type, you have all these strengths, or that if you don't identify with this type, you don't have any of those strengths. But it's just common tendencies. And then how we'll talk about what some people call weaknesses or opportunities for growth. We position it as really it's the same energy. Sometimes you just overuse those strengths. And I love what you're saying, Susan, because in the typing process, that is one of my top tips that I will give to people. I will say, put away the strengths because sometimes it can be clouded by who we want to be, or when we
Sure.
are living our best life, this is who we are. But this really is a problem resolution framework. And so we want to look at it maybe when you're stressed or you're overusing your strengths. What does that look like? And typically, that's a more honest look at what type I am if you're stuck between two. So I love that that's kind of how that helped you narrow that down.
For sure. I think before you like take a personality assessment, or my whole life, I've always wondered, I I yearn to have type one or type five qualities.
Yeah.
And I'm just not that kind of person. And so I have maybe thought of them as weaknesses that I didn't have those parts to my personality. And when you do a personality type, you can kind of identify, oh, I'm this and I'm supposed to be this. And it's okay that I don't have those other parts. And I think that's what's so useful about the Enneagrams is just the way that you can identify people that complement each other well.
Mhm.
And when you are working on a certain project or need certain skills, you don't have to feel bad that you don't have them yourself. There's other people on your team that hopefully have those parts. And it is a nice way to look at your team as a whole unit that can kind of conquer all the things.
Yes, exactly. Oh, you said that so well. Um, and that comes up a lot for fellow type nines because I think, especially in the workplace, that dynamic, there are a lot of qualities that I think might kind of have that unspoken, like they rank higher. Like the being very rational and logic and organized and decisive and speak concisely and of course, those
Sure.
are things that can be beneficial, but there's many other things that I don't know get talked about as much that other types really shine at. And one of the things for the type 9 is their ability to be incredibly influential through consensus building. Their leadership style is called the consensus builder because they want to make sure that everybody feels heard and seen, and when possible, everybody's voice is brought to the table to help make a decision, to help move something forward. And I'm just curious, is that something that you see in yourself, that ability to bring people together, that consensus builder gift?
No question. I've always kind of felt like as a person, I bring the weather to a room.
Okay.
So I feel like I can bring a calm. I feel like I can calm things down. And I don't know if I've learned these skills over the years because I've managed really big teams. This is actually the smallest team I've managed. So I don't know if I've grown into those skills, but for sure, as far as making people or wanting people to feel as valuable as the next people, yes, it's like it is my motivation. It's what I feel I need to do.
Yes, and I think sometimes that's where that um just that tension between am I a nine or am I a two will sometimes come from, because I think the two has some of that energy. But it's coming from a place more, how can I be of service? And not that nines aren't thinking that, but it's more, how can everybody be heard and how can I include everybody rather than me being the one to feel like I have to do it all.
For sure.
Okay, so I'm putting you on the spot a little bit and you don't have to
Okay.
answer. We'll cut this out if you don't want to. But one of the because nines are so focused and so good at bringing the consensus, building the consensus, bringing the calm, the peace, the weather that you were saying, that calm environment. When it's overused, sometimes it can be experienced by others or just the situation as avoidant, or there's tension in the room, but it's not getting brought up because I don't want to rock the boat or cause a problem, make something worse. Um, is that something that you have noticed in yourself, especially in the workplace? We'll keep it to the workplace.
Maybe in my younger life, I have gotten to the point where I feel transparency is the best policy. I don't feel like I need to I am more direct than I do not worry about conflict or confrontation because I don't find honesty to be super confrontational. I find honesty to be clear, and people can either acknowledge that or not, but I'm not going to be the one that's going to stand in confrontation. I'm just going to bring the honesty to the table, and you can either meet it or be defensive about it. But when I am super transparent and there's nothing to hide, it's so easy to communicate because it's so easy to follow my decisions back because it's always based on logic and transparency and not trying to be deceiving or deceptive. So I don't feel like I have confrontation problems. I it's not that I avoid conflict. I'm just open.
Yeah. Okay. And that is, I love hearing you say that. And that is a true kind of growth transformation for maybe like what you were saying in your younger years, you might have avoided it. But it is possible to kind of change the story about what having like honesty, being direct, what that means. I can actually, and this is exactly the kind of the reframe that we'll talk about during workshops for type nines is sometimes the initial story for some people, like you were saying, maybe in your younger years or other people, it's gosh, if I say this, I might rock the boat or I might upset them. But really, you could change the story to if I say this, we can get through this situation more quickly. And then there's not the weird tension or awkward silence. And so that's actually going to bring me more peace if I can speak honestly and directly. Exactly what you're saying.
100%. Yes.
Okay, so I want to ask you another question if you're willing to
Sure, yeah.
share. The
Yep.
other thing with type nines that I hear often is that they don't love the spotlight and they don't love to necessarily be called out. And so there will be a section in some of our sessions where we'll talk about how to make your team feel appreciated because what makes you feel appreciated might be very different. And we have some people, I'm gonna call out our type threes who a lot of times will say, call me on the stage, give me the trophy, shine the light on me, put me in the company newsletter. I want people to know what I'm doing. And we'll have other people, a lot of times the type nines, who will say, please don't ever call me on stage. Don't call me out. I want you to know that I'm appreciated, but I want to do it in a private way. What's your preferences at getting positive recognition and positive feedback like that?
It really gives me the ick. I hate it.
Okay.
There's nothing I like about it. I do hate being spotlighted. Even this podcast kind of stretches me a little, and I'm
Yeah.
used to, like, I do all of our company like presentations. I do all of our company meetings. We're planning a retreat in the fall. I don't have a problem with public speaking. What it
Yeah.
is, I don't like to talk about myself necessarily.
Yes.
But this is
Hmm.
a subject that as soon as we got back from the seminar, I rolled out a whole Enneagram program for our staff. And we're still in the process. I tell people, can you send me your type, and like tracking people's types down. Some people are super easy to type and you can just identify them quickly. Some people, they obviously some insight is needed. So, I'm passionate about this subject and rolling it out to the team and really kind of working with this tool to help our team get better. So I don't have a problem talking about this subject, but we were just talking about myself,
Yes.
it's not a subject that it's weird in my opinion.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for being honest.
Yeah,
And you're not alone. And that is often what many nines will say. And it's that it's not a matter of public speaking. It's just sometimes it feels icky or like too self-promotional. And what's really interesting is when we look at the Enneagram diagram, uh, our nines are connected to the type 6 and to the type 3. And so, what we'll refer to as their neglected strategy is the type 3, striving to feel outstanding. So, out of all the types, that tends to be the one that they resist the most. And a
it
lot I
is.
hear from what you just said. Yep, I hear that often. And so sometimes growth, in addition to speaking honestly and directly, like what you've said, is also looking for ways to, um, I want to say toot your own horn, but I don't think nines would like that phrasing, but to share what you are doing, the positive things you are doing, because sometimes we believe our work should speak for itself, and sometimes that's true, and then sometimes it's like, hey, look what I did, and that can feel so icky though at
It
times. And so
does.
that's when you know you're growing is you can say, hey, look what I did, or look what my team did.
Yeah.
And that's really and I'm not saying this directly to you, Susan, but I think listeners who might identify as a type 9, especially in leadership positions, can sometimes struggle with promoting their teams even because of that self-promotional kind of hesitation or neglect at times. So that's interesting that you said that. Sometimes the what they'll call have you guys or have you dug into like the stress arrows, growth arrows? Does that
No,
ring a bell
I
at
would
all?
love to.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we have the neglected arrow, and sometimes that is known as your growth arrow because that's like the best starting point. You can pull things from all types, but that's kind of your starting point. And then we have a stress arrow, or a way that we will actually support our strategy when we're stressed out. And for nines, it's the 6, striving to feel secure and safe. And so, and sixes, you get a reputation for having high anxiety and stress and worst case scenario and never going with the flow. And so, nines, sometimes when they're stressed, who tend to be so easygoing, so, relaxed and open, allow things to unfold as they will in times of stress or seasons, depending on what kind of day they've had, week, can start to show up and behave like a stressed 6. And this is another kind of type conflict that will happen. Am I a 6 or am I a 9? And so the question is, am I a 6 that's just really growing, or am I a 9 sometimes? Just really stressed out. Would you be willing to share, if any of that hit home for you, but anything that you've noticed about how you show up that might be different than how people see you initially when you're stressed or tired or burnt out?
Yeah, I for sure could identify with some of the 6 qualities in that regard. Um, so I work, um, our practices are owned by one person, and this one person has a couple of people that are around him. And one of the people that are around him is a strong type 6. She identifies
Okay.
as a type 6, and she really shows up as a type 6. And a lot of her stress shows up as anxiety, and she has to consider how he would be feeling all the time. And she's wrapped up in all of these stories in her head about it. And I can identify, there was a time in my life where I probably was a six. I suffered from worst case scenario and the doom and gloom and the afraid that I was dying every second. And I think when I am stressed, I have a tendency to get over emotional and anxious and consider worst case scenario. I've cleaned up my mindset a lot over the last several years. So a lot of those tendencies or habits I have broken. So I identify as an old type six thinker.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
When
Okay.
I do get stressed, I do get anxious. That I do worry about things, but I just don't ride those thoughts for very long anymore.
Okay. Okay.
But
I love that.
they do pop in. I just
Yeah.
don't stand with them.
Okay, okay, that's great. That's yeah, growth. We're always
Yeah.
growing. So that's great. As a seven, which is what I identify most with, my stress arrow is the type one, which almost feels
Mm.
like the complete opposite.
Yep,
But
it does.
it was mind blowing when I first learned about this part of the Enneagram because I was like, oh my gosh, I get so controlling. I get so perfectionistic. It has to go this way. We're going to have a good time no matter what. And so it was like, oh wow. And so when you kind of know, it's like, oh, when I'm cleaning the baseboards or, whatever it is, it's like, okay, so I'm stressed. I need to, take a step back, reset, whatever I need to do. So
It
that's
is
been
a
helpful.
good tool. It is a good
Yes.
tool to see yourself in that context and know that it's not something that's wrong with you. It's just something
No.
that is to be aware about yourself. And you
Yes.
can make an adjustment based on, my stress is showing up because I'm kind of moving into this type.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And this is one of the other pieces that can make the Enneagram typing process more challenging or sometimes frustrating. People will say, I just want to know what my type is because it is so much, well, you might look this way depending on the day you're having or the month you're having. But that core motivator, that core logic at the end of the day tends to be this other type most of the time. So that also can, but I think that to your point, it also can be so beneficial to have that complexity to have a deeper understanding of yourself and others.
For sure.
So if they're okay with it, I'd love to talk about the dynamic with the owner of the practices because earlier you had mentioned that he identifies most as a type 7 and that's been really eye-opening. Could you share just a little bit about what you've learned about him and how that has impacted your relationship or just kind of the dynamic with the team knowing that?
Sure. I have only ever worked for big businesses before I started working for him. And in my experience, I don't have a one-on-one relationship with the owner of a business. Um, and so to all of a sudden have an owner that's in front of you and you're making decisions based on his behalf, you assume things about a person and their personality type that would be you must be the owner of a business, so you must have some type 1 qualities and some type 5 qualities. And when those don't show up with someone who is the owner of a business, you wonder, like, what is the deal with this situation? Like, you have to have some planning strategies. You have to have some strategies that you're looking at the long-term growth and development of the staff. When you went up to the stage and talked about the Enneagram types, in my mind, I can only identify one, I can only consider one person at a time as these types are coming up.
Sure.
I'm either considering myself or he stuck out like a sore thumb. And he's type 7. And as soon as I could understand what his motivation is, it changes everything I think about him. He's a type 7. That's what he's striving for. And then I can flip the switch in my head to realize the strengths that he brings to the table as a type 7. He does not get lost in analysis paralysis. He keeps us moving forward. He's looking for the next best thing. And it really helps me appreciate him as an owner because he does have these qualities. And then to be able to give that to the team who also kind of struggles with, well, why doesn't he have this quality or why doesn't he have this quality? It's like, oh, but he has all of these other qualities. And if we had a type 1 or a type 5, we wouldn't move as fast. And maybe it's not as a smooth ride, but we're moving and let's appreciate him for that. So it's allowed us all to have a better relationship, I think, because it does highlight the qualities in people that you overlook when you're looking for something else. And so now I just need him to be a type 7. I need him to like keep us moving forward. I need us to be excited about our growth. And that's what he does for us. And it has changed the way we all look at him.
Yes. Ah, I love hearing that. And again, you said that so well. Regardless of the type of the leadership, it can be so eye-opening to see, oh, to your point, we're thinking they should be this way, but when we see their strengths, we realize, oh my gosh, we wouldn't have half this stuff if they weren't like this. So we need them to lean into that, and just kind of, yeah, dialed it in correctly as often as possible. And, the dynamic between a 7 and a 9, one of the things that jumps out at me, just based on what you've shared, resonates with you as a type 9, is 7s do tend to be so forward focused, much like the 3 or the 8. They're in that assertive stance. So it's jump and the net will appear. We'll figure it out along the way. We'll make mistakes, but we'll fix them on the go. And I think the 9 can bring uh, that let's bring others into the conversation, because 7s can get so excited about their idea, and a 9 can really complement that excitement by, hey, let's check in with the team. Let's, how is this going to impact them, or let's consider how this is going to impact them. And so that new idea can still be exciting, but it allows other people to come along with them when you have somebody like the 9 or sometimes like the 2 who are thinking about how's this going to impact the rest of the team. Where sometimes 7 leaders are just so focused on moving forward, we don't think about those kind of things. So that's a really great kind of synergy. Anything else like that stand out to you about your relationship specifically with him?
Just that we need to pull in a 1 or a 5 more into the conversation. I think that we often make decisions without all the facts. And I'm also like, I don't want details. I want headlines. So if you give me
Mm,
details, like I get bored. My mind will wander. In my mind, I'm like, I'm smart enough. I'm already filling in the details. I don't
uh-huh.
want you to bog me down with all the information. Give me the headlines. I got the gist of it. Let's go. And he's also like, 3 steps ahead and
Yeah.
pulling the plug already. And it's like, oh, we need a less bumpy ride for the staff. Let's pull in a 1 or let's pull in a 5 and make sure that we do have all of our plans in place. Let's make sure that we do get more information and maybe stop and fact gather. Or if we're losing structure, don't have a lot of structure, who can we pull into this conversation to give us that point of view or perspective? So it is, and realizing also that he is surrounded, in rooms where he's doing complex surgeries,
Yeah.
that he needs to have an assistant that is still bringing some lightness to the room, that's not lost in the details, that's kind of keeping him in a conversation that's pleasant. And because
Hmm.
he's even in a surgery bogged down, he's still looking for a little bit of excitement in his mind. So it's helped us support him as a doctor better by not getting lost in the mundane details and having 4 hours go by where we didn't give him any lightheartedness.
Yeah. See, And those are all very important things to know about. So with the one and the five energy, the thing that is really standing out to you, it sounds like, is we need somebody with kind of more data to back the decisions, more facts to influence our decision making. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm big picture and he's just looking for the next idea. And so I can see the big picture, but as far as like in the implementation of
Mm,
the actual plan, let's pull in some of these other people that are better at paving the road
yeah.
softer so we don't have to take the bumpy road every time we go. We'll get there. We'll get there, but it needs to be smoother for some
Yeah.
of our staff members.
Yes, yes. Okay, okay. In my experience, sixes can be really helpful in those times as well because they do have that, well, what's next and are able to think through worst case scenario and then prepare for it. And well, if we made this decision, what might happen? And so that can be also a really great pairing when a six and a seven work together. To your point, it is just a matter of understanding each other's styles so that you're bringing the complementary pieces at the right time rather than, to your point, bogging the seven down with details or negativity or we can't do this. And so that's kind of a delicate dance, but that's how relationships are.
They are. At least we have these tools now to understand each other and
Yes.
realize that sometimes our sixes don't like to make decisions,
Yeah.
in my mind because they're afraid or lack the confidence sometimes to make decisions. And look, and since our doctor or our owner is a seven, he also doesn't necessarily like to be caught up in every detail either. It is it's supporting our six in a way that gives her security, but doesn't need it does the answer doesn't need to come from seven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Very, very typical dynamic there. Um, and I see a lot of there probably were a lot more sevens in the at the event than I typically get to be around in a regular corporate environment. Um, I see a lot of sevens who are entrepreneurs, and that makes sense, probably based
Yeah,
on what we've talked about.
yeah.
And inside an organization, I see them a lot of times maybe in the marketing department or leading some new initiative or starting a new department where they can, bring those new ideas and excitement and get people on board. Um, and so that it's just interesting to hear that, you know, the owner is at that kind of that entrepreneurial seven that you see often and kind of outside the corporate world at times. So let me ask you this because this is something I'm sure our listeners are curious about. You had mentioned you brought back and kind of created, you brought back the Enneagram and kind of created your own program. Susan, this is probably the top question that I get even after day long workshops is now what? How do we keep this alive? What do we do? Would you be willing to share some of the things that you're doing inside your team using the Enneagram?
Sure. So I had no experience with the Enneagram, before I saw your presentation. So when we got back, all I did was kind of share the types, share the pet peeves, share the overstrengths of each type, and then have the staff kind of type themselves. And more to also introduce Dr. McCormack and help people understand his work style better. Um, that was right when we got back from Nashville. We are doing a retreat on August 21st now, that I'm preparing for. And now it's like, okay, now you know your type. What are some harmonic blends that we have together? And what does a stressed out type look like and how to support them? I think it's more understanding how we work as a team together better with this tool, um, and how you can notice when you're in a stressed out state of being and how to get yourself kind of back on track. Um, Yeah, I have a lot of diving to do still before our program or our retreat happens. But that's kind of the goal is to, now that we are aware of each other, how do we work together and how do we use this as a complement for better teams?
And that's really all that it is just keeping it alive, keeping the conversation, finding ways to interject what you learned about the Enneagram, what you're learning about yourself, others. So I love what you're doing is intentionally having time to share, hey, this is our team dynamic. Hey, this is our leaders type, and this is how best to get along with them. This is how to get along with each other. This is what we look like in stress. So all these things that you're talking about, it is just a matter of talking about. It's like going to the gym. It's like you can have a really great workout with a personal trainer, but unless you go back to the gym, it's going to be really hard to see any kind of result. So you're doing, the post great day with a personal trainer where it's like, okay, now we got to put in the reps. We got to keep talking about it. So I think that will hopefully inspire others just to look for different ways. And we have different suggestions and ideas, and the team map is a great thing just to kind of always pull out and refer to and add new hires to, so that you're constantly, who's great at this, or why might this be causing, why might be we be having friction here, and to start to understand some of that. So I love that you're doing that, Susan. Well, I appreciate your time so much. I know that you all are very busy, and so thank you for making the time. And then, as a nine, to your point earlier, I know that this is a little out of your comfort zone. So thank you for taking that step and joining me. Is there anything that you would like to say that I haven't asked you about that would kind of make this episode feel complete before I ask you where people can find you online?
I mean, I think understanding each other. I think we are all busy with, daily stress, and we forget that we're these our own perspective, unique perspective and points of view, and we assume that everybody thinks like us. And because you're not behaving in a way I think you should based on that reaction, um I have a judgment, and the Enneagram like brings back the judgment. I don't have to, that's just, we're just different.
Yeah.
And it's okay that you have this and you have strengths, and it's okay I'm like this and I have strengths. And I don't have to blame you as a person, and you don't have to feel bad as this kind of person. You are who you are, and we all complement each other, and we need each part of the team. And so, before I was like, I do not want to identify as a one. I do not want to identify as, certain
I
ones
know.
or whatever, but it makes you aware of how important they are. And there's one person doesn't have all of the things.
Right.
And we need each person to complement the whole circle. So it's really been useful for us, for sure.
Ah, well said. So well said. I'll leave that there. If anybody is a fellow nine and wants to say, "Oh, Susan, I felt you there," and just say hi, or reach out and maybe ask questions about what you're doing with your team, what's the best place that people can connect with you? Or if they happen to be listening in the Columbus or Cleveland, Ohio area and they need a good dentist, let us know about the dental practice too, please.
Okay, we are at McCormack Dental Group, so you can find us online at mccormackdentalgroup.com. My email is susan.mccormackdentalgroup@gmail.com. My Instagram handle is SusanJ3476, so I can also be found there.
Okay. All right. Well, Susan, I so appreciate you taking the time. Listeners, definitely reach out if you have questions. Ask Susan. Let her know what you're taking away from this episode. As always, thank you for being here, and we'll see you in the next one.